This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Warring forces in Libya accuse each other of violating ceasefire. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa agrees to step in over Ethiopia-Egypt standoff on Nile Dam. And Tunisia integrates sexual health education into curriculum. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. Tunisia discusses law on equality and inheritance. And Uganda take a 2-0 advantage against Ethiopia in their first leg of the Under-17 FIFA Women World Cup qualifiers. The two warring sides in Libya have accused each other of breaking an internationally brokered ceasefire hours after the truce was agreed. The ceasefire that officially started on Sunday was proposed by Turkey and Russia as fighting continued around the capital. Both the internationally recognized Government of National Accord and the eastern-based Libyan National Army said they conditionally agreed to the truce. The call for a suspension of hostilities came after the LNA's advance into the strategic city of Sirte along Libya's coastline. The United Nations and European powers have also been pushing for a summit in Berlin aimed at addressing foreign involvement in Libya and the resumption of peace processes. Last week, Turkey announced the beginning of troop deployments from their forces to back the Tripoli government. The LNA has also reportedly received backing from the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Egypt and Russia. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Libya's internationally recognized Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj have met in Istanbul. The meeting comes as Libya's opposing LNA and GNA forces accuse each other of violating their latest ceasefire. The Turkish president and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, called for a ceasefire when they met in Istanbul last week. Turkey's defense ministry said it had observed that the situation was calm, except for one or two separate incidents. The most recent developments follow a 9-month offensive on Tripoli by eastern forces allied to Khalifa Haftar. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has agreed to assist the Ethiopian government in solving its standoff with Egypt over the massive Nile Dam project. Egypt is blaming Ethiopia for the failure of the latest round of talks on the construction of the dam. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali called on Ramaphosa to intervene during talks at the Union buildings on Pretoria on Sunday. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
Once the pomp and ceremony was done and dusted, the two leaders got on with the business of the day. A number of issues had to be attended to. These include the official business of the state visit. The two governments signed a number of agreements to enhance cooperation, including on tourism and health.
This morning's meeting with President Cyril Ramaphosa has been a great opportunity to further solidify the long-standing relations between our two countries. Beyond elevating our economic and political ties, we also explored ways of enhancing our people-to-people ties across and within our two countries.
A number of South African government departments have had valuable contact with their Ethiopian counterpart ministers and are making good progress in strengthening relations.
The discussions then moved to other critical matters affecting the continent. The official visit also afforded the two leaders an opportunity to discuss issues of mutual concern, and those issues include peace, security, and development on the African continent. These include the standoff between Egypt and Ethiopia over the Nile Dam project. The Ethiopian Prime Minister asked the South African president to facilitate a dialogue between Ethiopia and Egypt over that project. The construction of the dam, which promises to provide much-needed electricity to Ethiopia's people, has been a contentious point.
A solution is possible because the two countries are great countries, and the Nile River is important to both countries, and there must be a way in which their interests can be addressed, and there must be a way in which a solution can be found. As for ourselves, we are willing to play a role in facilitating whatever agreement that can be crafted.
It has also emerged here that Ethiopia will hold a parliamentary election in May or June, despite security and logistic concerns.
I think we will conduct election this year because this is constitutional mandate and we have to live up to the constitution. There might be lots of challenges, not only logistics, but also peace and security. But if there was no challenge, why we need to go to election? We need election because there is challenge and we want to confront it in a very democratic way.
The election will be the first under this Prime Minister, as he only took office in April 2018. Yudison Jamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Well, on Saturday, the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed attended the governing ANC's 108th anniversary celebrations in Kimberley. CGTN's Yolisa Njumela has more.
The ANC anniversary is a key event in South Africa's political calendar. The annual gathering serves as a rallying call for ANC members to participate in the party's programs for the year.
I'd like to start off by extending our greetings to our honored guest, His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia.
The Ethiopian Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed Ali was invited to this anniversary ahead of an official state visit between South Africa and Ethiopia. South Africa and Ethiopia's relations are informed by historical ties dating back to South Africa's liberation struggle. The two nations established official diplomatic relations in 1994 as the basis for present-day political and economic cooperation.
Today is one of those moments that compels us to reflect on the legacies of the past and the long history that exists between our two nations. I would like to note with satisfaction that the value of freedom, equality, and prosperity that held us together during the heroic struggle to uproot apartheid have served us as a strong foundation for the current excellent relations we have successfully established.
South Africa's president says the Prime Minister's visit forms part of preparations for South Africa's assumption of a year-long term as chair of the African Union in February. Back to the ANC anniversary. January marks the ANC's birthday. The party is turning 108 years this year. The celebrations are a multi-purpose event to celebrate the party's milestones as well as to mobilize and lure followers. ANC supporters from across the country gathered here to mark the occasion and hear the annual January 8 statement. The governing party's January 8 statement also set the tone for its activities and programs for the year. In a country that faces economic turmoil, at this event, the governing party's president promised to ensure that the tide would be turned.
While we dare not ignore the challenges we face, our program of transformation remains ambitious, and our determination to succeed must also be unwavering. This is a pivotal period in the history of the African National Congress as we strive for social and economic freedom under challenging conditions.
On Sunday, Prime Minister Ahmed Ali will join President Ramaphosa at the Union Buildings in Pretoria on official state business. Yodison Jamara for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Meanwhile, Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi is continuing his Africa tour. He arrived in Zimbabwe last night for a 3-day visit. He was received by his Zimbabwean counterpart Sibusiso Moyo in the capital Harare. Wang is scheduled to meet with Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who has suspended his 3-week annual leave. The two sides will discuss international challenges facing both sides, as well as how to further strengthen their relations. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between the two countries. Wang's trip is part of a long-standing tradition for the Chinese foreign minister to make the African continent his first destination each year. Our correspondent Farai Mwakatuya in Harare takes us through what this visit means for Zimbabwe.
Wang Yi's visit is seen as not just a vote of confidence in the administration and government of this country, but in the people of Zimbabwe, many of whom see this visit as a consolidation of the relationship that exists between the two countries and from which Zimbabwe would like to get more. Many people I've spoken to here say they would like to see China implement more investment projects that will create employment, that will open up industries, and that will bring in much needed foreign currency. Beyond the economy, Zimbabwe also has infrastructure development needs. China is already the leading funder of infrastructure projects in this country, something for which citizens are grateful for and would like to see more of. Now, as Wang Yi wraps up his tour of Africa, the benefits will be felt across the entire continent. A visitor coming into your home is usually symbolic in the African context. It's seen as a demonstration of the value that they place on their relationship with you. And these annual African tours are seen in the same light, as a demonstration of the value and commitment that China has to Africa. A commitment that goes beyond just words, but to actions. Actions that many African countries hope will come out of this latest visit. Farai Mwakatuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Tunisia integrates sexual health education into curriculum. And Niger launches project to help build capacity in the fight against HIV AIDS.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
The Ministry of Education in Tunisia has decided to integrate sexual health education into the curriculum because of increasing sexual harassment, particularly in educational institutions. But some authorities say that the decision needs further study and consultation.
President of the Education, Training and Scientific Research Network called for an in-depth dialogue with all stakeholders, including Sharia, social scientists, and sexology specialists, to study the proposal to integrate sexual health education into the curriculum for over 2 million pupils.
There are currently a number of difficulties hindering the implementation of this decision, including the length of the curricula and the time spent in school. There are more important reforms than integrating sex education into educational curricula.
Specialists also stressed the need to examine this issue within the Committee of Youth, Cultural Affairs and Scientific Research in Parliament.
The ministry should have consulted the civil society before imposing this project. We are willing to work with UNESCO or any international organization on such initiatives, but we insist on adapting the program to our Tunisian customs and traditions.
The special envoy of the ministry stressed that sexual health education is a constitutional right, just like education for citizenship, the environment and food.
A large number of youths go through the period of childhood and reach adulthood without having the minimum information about their bodies and health, which hinders their physical, psychological, emotional and social development.
The Ministry of Education insisted on the importance of reinforcing teachers' training in the psychological, social, cultural, legal and ethical fields related to sexual health, in addition to involving parents in the education of their children in sexual health. In recent years, 100 cases of suspected sexual harassment against students and pupils had been recorded, in addition to the issuance of 23 decisions of permanent dismissal of the teachers involved in these cases, as well as 20 provisional dismissals. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now let's talk about wills in South Africa. For the immediate family that are left behind after the death, there's a lot of uncertainty about the future, especially if there isn't a written will. Angelo Coppola speaks to a prominent Johannesburg lawyer about wills and the possible consequences if there isn't one.
So what are the three key positive issues that arise when a will is actually in place?
Because we have the ability to have the freedom of testation, we can choose how we want our estate to be administered. So the key things would be, one, that you would be able to decide who your beneficiaries are, and two, how you would divide up the assets and the estate in terms of percentages, whether there would be specific items that you would leave as a bequest to particular people. You would be also able to choose who you want to be your executor or your executrix. And I think I'm going to go into a fourth one. Importantly, who would be the guardian of your children. I think those would really be key points in formulating and signing a will.
So what could go wrong if there isn't a will in place? What are like the three key main stumbling blocks to that will not being around?
If you die intestate, your estate would then be administered according to what we have as the Interstate Succession Act. And what would happen there is that the things that could go wrong is beneficiaries would have to be identified. There's a particular order of beneficiaries, so it is limited to a certain extent, and I just have to expand very quickly. But for example, if you have a spouse and children, they would be the immediate beneficiaries who would inherit. But then you may have children that we don't know about, illegitimate children that come along, and then maybe the will may be contested. Secondly, you would not have your own executor that you've appointed, who would then be responsible for administering the estate, and it would be left to the Master of the High Court to do so. And thirdly, if there are no beneficiaries, your estate would lie with the state. It would be bestowed to the estate, or forfeited, should I say, to the estate, where it would lie for 30 years until a beneficiary appears or doesn't.
Now, everyone has horror stories in any line of business. I'm guessing in your line of business, horror stories are a dime a dozen. Give me a broad sort of picture of the biggest horror story you've had to deal with.
There are many horror stories, whether there's a will or there isn't a will. Particularly, we have many instances of forged wills that appear, disputes, etc., that arise, or conflicts. A young entrepreneur in his 30s, multi-billionaire, made a fortune of money, and had a very aggressive divorce. Acrimonious, ugly, hated his ex-wife. And they had a young daughter, and they got divorced, and he continued building a lot of wealth, and he didn't change his will. When he passed away, he as he had not changed his will, his ex-wife inherited everything. So he was responsible for looking after his mom. She ended up with nothing. Because there was so much acrimony, the ex-wife didn't help her, and the ex-wife ended up with billions and billions of rands that he would have been not happy about.
Niger has launched a new HIV AIDS project fully funded by China. This initiative will help the government with capacity building in the fight against a global pandemic. Let's now take a look.
Over 10 days, a health initiative brought HIV screening and awareness to 3 regions in Niger. It's part of a larger HIV/AIDS control program, spearheaded not by the president but by his wife. In 2018, the First Lady of China and various African nations launched a joint initiative to build a future free of AIDS.
At the forum of the Sino-African Cooperation, the First Lady of Niger, Madame Aissata Youssoufou, and her Chinese counterpart, the WTO Internet Ambassador for Tuberculosis and HIV, Madame Peng Li Yuan, launched a joint initiative on HIV and AIDS prevention.
I would like to take advantage of this moment to present my sincere thanks to the People's Republic of China, represented by the Ambassador of China, who is present in this place, and the First Lady of China, in the valuable support that China has given us.
The First Lady of Niger has long been committed to tackling the issue of HIV/AIDS. She's previously promised to use her influence to reduce mother-to-child transmission.
In Niger, since the discovery of the first case of AIDS in 1987, major efforts have been made by the government and its partners to prevent this disease and provide continuous care for people infected and affected by HIV. The estimated number of new HIV infections has been reduced by 70% in the last 6 years.
Chinese investment in Niger in the health sector remains diversified and varied. This includes a modern hospital entirely financed by Beijing. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including